Good morning. I hope that you're all well and that you've had a good week. This is a pre-recorded video. I'm not actually at home in Cornwall. I'm in Cincinnati at a workshop for the Queen City Sampler Guild. And today at the Queen City Sampler Guild, I have released the Queen of the May for 2024. I know that there have been many stitches waiting for this sampler to release, and it is the beautiful Hannah Green. Isn't she gorgeous? This sampler glows. The colours are so intense. This little girl, she had a wonderful eye for composition, symmetry, harmony. It's just so beautiful, this sampler. A very worthy Queen of the May for Hands Across the Sea samplers in 2024. It's actually a day early. Tomorrow, the Monday, is the official May Day holiday in this country. Okay, so let's talk about this lovely sampler. It's available as a printed booklet and as a PDF, and it's available on the Hands Across the Sea Samplers website as a printed booklet and a PDF, and the booklets can be sourced from all good needlework stores around the world. Hannah Green. Okay, we don't actually know Hannah's story. Hannah Green is actually a common name in Great Britain, and we found many of them, but I strongly believe that this sampler was stitched in Yorkshire. And the reason I think that is that I have other samplers in my collection that has this same border with this red or pink single line of cross stitch around a house with the parkland in front of it with all the different animals and the shepherd. I have got some that has a shepherd and a shepherdess, but I am certain that this sampler is from Yorkshire. The stitch count is 322 stitches by 279 stitches on 28 count linen, which is 14 count Ada. The sampler is 23 inches by 19.93 inches. If you stitched it on 36 count linen, 18 count Ada, it would be 17.89 inches by 15.5 inches. The model was stitched on 56 count, which makes it 11.5 inches by 9.96. The original sampler was stitched on a much lower count fabric, so is much bigger than this. The stitches used are cross stitch over 2 threads predominantly, but the flock of birds and the verse is stitched over 1. So if you want to stitch this sampler on Ada, you will have to adapt the verse so that it's over 2. You can stitch over 1 on Ada, but it's tricky. I personally think it's much better to rechart a verse and stitch it over 2. And for those of you who do want to stitch this on Ada, we will work with you to help you chart something else to go in that section. We've done that for many people over the years. There's a little bit of satin stitch in the peacock's tails, in the eye of the tails, and there are rice stitches in the base of the baskets. I love rice stitch. It gives such a beautiful texture to your piece of work. The colours on this sampler are, I don't know, they're just gorgeous. It brought me so much joy when I was sitting down reproducing this sampler. I hope the colours are capturing properly on the screen. I've given up with my iPad. I don't know what's going on with the software on iPads and phones these days, but the colour settings are very difficult to manage. You'll note on here there are 2 bees. These bees are not to be stitched The bees are the mark of the model stitcher, the contented stitcher. Just absolutely glorious. All of these motifs here would make fabulous smalls. So pretty. Joyous, joyous sampler. And of course it's got my favourite verse, Jesus, permit thy gracious name to stand. There are 16 colours used. The model was stitched with Soie 103 from a Vera Soie, which is the favourite medium of the model stitcher to work in. It was stitched on tabby cat linen that was dyed to the shade of just the ticket, and that gives a lovely canvas for you to create this sampler on. What else can I tell you about the sampler? The original sampler I wanted to show you today, but we're actually packing up parts of our house because we've got some building work starting after I get back from Cincinnati, and I've put it in a box, and I'm fairly certain that box has gone up into the attic. So I tried desperately to find it yesterday, but I just can't go up in the attic at the moment. My back is quite bad at the moment. But I will show you the original once our building work's over and we unpack what's been put into storage. There is the booklet, and in the booklet we talk about what May Day is in the UK, and we share some information about the sampler. The chart is annotated where necessary. For example, here we're explaining that the grey boxing lines around the rice stitch is not to be stitched, they're just there to outline the individual rice stitches. And there's not too much annotation because this sampler is very straightforward to stitch. Now, many of you might think this sampler seems familiar, and that's because some of you will have the sampler in your homes already in the form of pillow covers. This is also featured on our tote bags and our coasters as well. I love this sampler so much, I couldn't resist using it in many different ways. So there she is, Hannah Green, the 2024 Queen of the May for Hands Across the Sea samplers. We always like to choose something that's a standout sampler, and I know that many of you consider this to be a special sampler because since we started issuing the images on items, I have had so many emails saying, when is this sampler going to be reproduced? Well, it's here now, available for you. Now, I also have another sampler that we are releasing, and that sampler is really the tale of two samplers, and I will explain. And I'm going to read you a story from the booklet. This is a tale of two samplers. In the March of 2019, I stumbled across a stunning sampler in an auction catalogue. The sampler had been worked by Jane Harris Hodgson in 1833. When Jane arrived, there were many oohs and ahs amongst my needlework friends. I decided to gift Jane to my dearest friend Sandra, as she had fallen in love with the sampler. We both share a passion for large samplers with sweeping floral borders. Amazingly, I then came across an almost identical sampler for sale, which I was lucky enough to acquire. The second sampler was dated 1 year later, 1834, and was stitched by Charlotte Amelia Stevens. There was no doubt that these two samplers were closely connected. Both girls were 13 years old when they worked their samplers. Other than their names and the years 1833 and 1834, there are no discernible differences. The composition of the samplers, colours, verses and the wording of the dedications are the same. Jane finished her sampler on Friday, September the 30th, 1833, and Charlotte on Thursday, June the 19th, 1834. When Sandra received Jane, she initially planned to reproduce her. However, when I acquired Charlotte, Sandra decided that she would recreate Charlotte so that the two girls could hang together in her home. It's been an epic 4-year journey for Sandra with the girls. The sampler presented to you within this booklet is Sandra's interpretation of Charlotte and Jane. It's not a reproduction, it's an interpretation. Now, at the start of my research, the two girls were initially elusive. Jane's surname was spelt Hodgson without a D on her sampler, but in family history records it was spelt with a D. I eventually found both of the girls in the village of Stoke, and that lies in the parish of Stoke Damerel, and it's one of the ancient parishes of Devon. The parish includes stretches of the coast west of Plymouth and the north of Devonport. Jane Harris Hodgson was born in 1820, and her mother was a Quaker. And that explains why we have this beautiful floral border. There's so many, well, not whispers, there's shouts of Quaker in this border. And that also might be why the girls were a little bit harder to find, because they were Quakers. I don't know. I'm only assuming that the girls were Quakers. I know that Jane's mother was. Now, Jane married James Strickland, who was a builder, and just shortly after the 1841 census, Jane died. James remarried 1 year later, and in the 1851 census, there's no mention of Jane's daughter, and she wasn't living with her father and stepmother, nor her grandparents, but there's no record of her death. She simply disappears from records. However, after Jane's death, both her brother and her sister named daughters after her, and I think that's so touching. The family remembered her. Charlotte was born 1 year after Jane, also in the village of Stoke, and she married Arthur Geek, and they moved from the southwest coast of England to the north of England, and they were recorded as living in Hume in Lancashire with 2 children and a servant. The family do not appear in the 1861 census, and that could be because their surname of Geek was misrecorded. Their son died at 8 years old. Arthur died at 55, and Charlotte died when she was 46 years of age. Their daughter, who was called Amelia, she lived to 83 years of age. She had a long life, and I think she lived quite a comfortable life from the census returns. I don't think money was a problem for her. Now, I've been unable to find any information about schools in Stoke, so I don't know if there was a Quaker school, but I do believe that, both of those girls, their parents were comfortable. They wouldn't have gone to a charity school. It was probably some form of fee-paying school. So there we are. That is Sandra's interpretation, amalgamation of the two samplers. She's given the sampler the name Charlotte so that Charlotte's model can hang alongside Jane's original sampler. This is Charlotte's original sampler, which hangs in my home. It's in desperate need of being cleaned. It's on my list of samplers to be conserved. Maybe I should stitch Jane so that she can hang alongside Charlotte in my home. I don't know. Now, the Jane's original sampler is the same size as Charlotte. Sandra stitched her sampler on 36 count wild honey from Legacy Linens. It's a count of linen that Sandra is comfortable working on, and I do believe that everybody should work on the count of linen that they're comfortable working on. The sampler, the stitch count is 336 stitches by 488 stitches. It uses 28 colours, and the sampler was stitched with Auvera Soie d'Alger, and in the booklet there are conversions for Soie 103 and DMC. Now, a note to be careful of: in our booklets we normally start with Soie 103 on the thread legend, because that's what 99% of our models are stitched with. Because this sampler was stitched with Soie d'Alger, the thread legend starts with Soie d'Alger, so don't get caught out because you're used to seeing 103 first. Okay, so let me just give you some sizes. If you stitch Charlotte on 28 count linen, or 14 count Ada, the design would be 24 inches by 34.86 inches. And you come in to visit me. If you stitched her on 36 count linen, 18 count Ada, which is the closest to the 37 count wild honey, it will be 18.67 inches by 27.11. And if you stitched it on, say for example, 46 count linen, it would be 14.61 inches by 21.22 inches. It's a big sampler, but it's also a pretty magnificent sampler as well. The body of the sampler is all stitched in cross stitch over 2. The verse and the dedication is cross stitch over 1. That's right. But again, there is nothing stopping you amending the verse and the dedication to cross stitch over 2. And again, we will help you if you want to do that. You've got a wet face. What have you been doing? This is my second shirt on this morning. I got dressed this morning, and within seconds Hugo had clambered up onto my lap and got me all dirty. Right, okay, so these are the samplers that we're releasing today. This sampler, it's so beautiful. I hope you agree with us. A very worthy Queen of the May for 2024. We want our Queens of the May to be stitchable by all stitchers, and this is a very achievable sampler. When you stitch this, you're going to have something very special on your sampler wall. This model will shortly be going back to the Contented Stitcher, and I must admit I'm really going to miss it. This sampler has lived on an easel to the side of my desk, where I spend most of my day at my desk working, and it's been my companion. I wish I'd stitched it, but there we are. Okay, enjoy both of the samplers. A huge congratulations to Sandra charting, putting together the chart for Charlotte. That was such a big undertaking, that sampler. Sandra worked on that sampler all through COVID, and I'm sure it's got many different memories for her. Okay, until next week when I will be back in Cornwall, stay well, stay safe. Bye-bye.